Hey, welcome back to Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel. Thank you so much for joining me here on this road trip. We are just moving through Nehemiah. I really enjoy getting all this put together for you. And we are doing the second part of Nehemiah chapter 2. Just as a reminder, if you want to actually read everything that I am talking about, you can always go to my website, www.roadtrippingwithRachel.com, and you can see my blog posts that air at the same time that my videos actually go up. Now, Nehemiah, just as a refresher, we have seen where he is the cupbearer for the king, and Nehemiah has heard that the city of Jerusalem in and of itself has never been refortified. And that just means that the walls that would have surrounded the city in order to protect it still don't exist, or they are still in ruins. And so Jerusalem in and of itself, the holy city, is able to be invaded. So Nehemiah, he has now gotten permission from the king that he has permission now to go in. He is going to be going into Jerusalem. He is going to be acting as a governor. And now, as we are getting into the second part of this really speaks to my administrator soul. I originally read Nehemiah, did a deeper dive into it while I was in college for a church administration class. And that is really where I fell in love with Nehemiah. I had read it previously while I was a teenager, but it just resounds differently whenever you do a deep dive into it. Nehemiah chapter 2 really has a lot for people who are in positions of having to make decisions. We see that there are really three key principles in my mind that God really outlines here for us that are good principles regarding ministry. Now, this first one we're going to see, it's in chapter 2, 12 through 16, and that is that everyone doesn't need to know everything immediately. We live in a world of instant gratification. We have news outlets, we have the internet, we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which is now X, Snapchat, we've got YouTube, obviously. We have, still websites and everything in all of our news outlets. We know things really as they're happening or very quickly thereafter. And we want to be able to know everything. Majority of people, we want all the details. Here is what I want to get at with this. Everyone doesn't need to know everything as it is happening. There are some things I just don't need to know. There are some things you just don't need to know. I say this from the administrative perspective. When I would be looking to come to a decision on something, I would do a lot of research. And then when I got all my results in, I was able to present all of this information. So I did all that without telling anyone that I was working on this or planning on this, because everyone didn't need to know. That way, in case I got turned down, it wasn't like hype and build up and excitement only to have it completely wiped out. The other half of that is I didn't have to listen to everyone tell me why it was a bad idea. But when everyone knows everything immediately, everyone wants to give their opinion. They want to badmouth it. They want to talk about all of the different options that are there. Nehemiah could have experienced this, because when he returned to the area that was Israel, everyone wanted to know why he was there, but instead he went and did a lot of inspections on his own, and there was only maybe a very small handful of people who knew why he was actually there and what his purpose was. And even those who went out and inspected everything didn't actually know all of the details of what he was actually planning. Sometimes there is a lot of work that goes into something that everyone else just doesn't need to know about. And honestly, y'all don't need to always offer up your opinions on everything. And when we're talking on the ministry perspective, with my background, I can look at how a ministry is being conducted and I can pick it apart and say well, this is why they're doing this. Like, this is the rationale, this is the reason. If I can't find the rationale or reason, then I'm going to question it. But your average person sitting in church just doesn't need to know everything that goes into all of the decisions that get made. And if you're a small group leader, yeah, you're not making like any huge decisions, but as you're interacting and working with the people in your group, they don't understand all the work that you put into it. The education minister understands all the work that you're putting into it. And likely, even before something gets to you, your education minister has already put a ton of thought and work in to help find the general curriculum that you're able to use. The second really key principle here from an administrative perspective is that presentation is key. If you are wanting to move something forward, the way in which it is presented matters. So the way in which something is presented is key. I know of a church where the pastor informed the church this is what they were doing. It was not, and it was a big deal. Let me say that. It was a very big deal what he was presenting to them. It's actually, I've said before, like, I grew up Southern Baptist, and this was a Southern Baptist church. It was a big enough deal. It needed to have gone to a vote. It wasn't something that the pastor should have informed the church that they were doing. It was something where he should have presented everything to the church and explained why he thought this was the best idea, and this was what it was going to cost, and this was why it was going to cost this much money. Instead, he informed the church that that was what they were doing. As a result, it caused a lot of problems, but that is a very negative example. But when you present things positively, once again, back to my college days working in admissions, I would work with the education department, and one of the things that they would teach was, teach people to sandwich things. So that means you talk about a good thing, you talk about a negative, and then you end on a good point, because people are going to remember the first and the last things that you tell them whenever you're giving them a general outline. So whenever you are presenting something, present a positive, acknowledge the negative, and then end it with another positive. Because then the two positives are going to be what people are going to remember as a general rule. And they are more likely then to go along with what it is that you're actually presenting to them. That is exactly what Nehemiah does. He presents what they are doing in such a way that the people feel convicted about the fact that they haven't taken the time to build up their defenses, which they should have felt, most definitely. He calls them to repentance, which he should have done. And he also gives hope, because God has been faithful to bring them there. Therefore, the people are like, yes, rally up. Let's go build the walls. Case in point. The final real principle that God gives us is like revolving around ministry. And this is even just like administration, anyone who's in a decision-making position, is that there's always going to be someone who doesn't like what you're doing. All of these people who surrounded the area of Israel, or who had been these people groups that had now grown while the Israelites had been gone for the last, they were gone in captivity for approximately 70 years. And then as they're coming back, you're talking like another 100, like in total, like 150, 175 years. People groups had grown because they weren't at war with Israel anymore. During that time, there was an opportunity for them to grow and to expand. They didn't like that Israel was rebuilding their walls around Jerusalem, because rebuilding the walls was a sign of their strength, that they were now stable. They were there to stay. They were united. That's what building the walls represented, along with the sacrifices. But the walls were a physical representation of, we are here, we're staying, we are fortifying our city. If you come for us, we have a place to go for safety. Those people didn't like that, because it means they couldn't beat up on them anymore. It meant that they were coming back. They were going to take what they thought had become theirs. And we see it really today. We're seeing this still play out in Israel today. But in a very real life perspective, you're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have people who are going to disagree with the decisions that you're making. Whether that is the type of dress that you choose to wear. I mean, I'm kind of coming out now of the phase of like, I have a bunch of friends getting married. But you know, you're always gonna have people who are gonna poo-poo on the wedding dress or the venue or the food that's served. 4 Weddings off TLC, like I loved that show, but like rating weddings and things like that, like you're always gonna have people who don't like what's happening or what's going on. And when you are in a position of ministry, you're always gonna have people who are going to disagree with you. They're not going to like the music that is chosen. They're not going to like the sermon points. They're not going to like the temperature in the sanctuary. They're not going to like that you don't have children's church. They're not going to like that, you know, women's Bible studies on Thursday nights instead of Wednesday nights. They're not going to like that the color of the carpet. Like there's going to be things that people don't like. I will say here, like to anyone who, if you are that person, I refer to you as Mr. or Mrs. Flugelhorn. I took that from Dr. Morley Maynard from my seminary days. Mr. and Mrs. Flugelhorn. If you are that person, learn that there is a difference between biblical and preference. I have been in plenty of churches where I am like, it is hotter than Hades. But you know what? The pastor is preaching the word. People are repenting. People are coming under conviction because of the word that is being preached. And they are praising and worshiping God, even when they are singing out of the hymnals from like 1984. My preference is to be in a lovely air-conditioned building with lovely stained glass windows and music that is on tune. And as much as I love the hymns, I also like to hear guitars, pianos, and drums. That's a preference. It is not a necessity. And there are people all over the world who still worship God without any of those amenities that you want to complain about. Get over it. But these are 3 basic principles that if we go into ministry, or if you feel called to ministry, being aware of the fact that, yeah, you don't have to like spill your guts immediately. Like you can do the research and you can then take everything that you learn and then present it in such a way that people are going to want to go along with what it is that you are presenting because you really believe that it is the best option. And just be aware, not everyone's going to agree. It's okay. It is. God is going to move whether or not everyone agrees with you or not. And sometimes they will present a very valid point as to why what you want to do is not a good idea. Have the discernment to be able to hear and understand when that is what is happening. Thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you guys all next time. And if you did enjoy this, make sure that you like and subscribe. That really helps out my channel. We're slowly growing, but that really helps out the channel. It helps get the word out to other people. And it's a great way just to like kind of make you think about what it is that you're reading and hopefully help some small group leaders that are out there. But I look forward to seeing you guys all next week. Bye.